He found her carving a marker in the hillside. It was a cool autumn afternoon, the kind when leaves whispered secrets and the sky draped itself in shades of gray. Ethan had been hiking for a while, seeking the quiet solace of nature, but when he spotted her, bent over with focused intensity, he felt drawn to the small clearing just off the main trail. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with windswept hair and a blue jacket that hugged her tightly against the chill. In her hands, she held a small chisel, its tip glinting in the faint light. Each tap against the soft earth produced a muted thud, a heartbeat in the otherwise still surroundings. Curiosity swept through Ethan, a gentle push that urged him to step closer. Softly he cleared his throat. "Hey there." She looked up, her green eyes wide with surprise. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze, caught between her previous focus and the intrusion of his voice. "It's a marker," she said slowly, glancing back at the hillside. Ethan nodded, intrigued. It was a straightforward offer, but the weight behind it felt heavy with implications. In that moment, he sensed that this was no ordinary task. She hesitated, glancing at the half-finished design carved into the earth. Swirls, letters, and symbols were weaving together under the impression of her careful hands. This wasn't just a carving, it was a connection, a message etched into the landscape. "I could use some extra hands," she finally replied, a slight smile breaking through her uncertainty. As Ethan knelt beside her, he felt a warmth swell in his chest. She handed him another tool, its cold metal contrasting sharply with the heat of their shared breath in the crisp air. Together they worked, sharing moments of silence that spoke volumes, tension easing as they fell into a rhythm of tapping and clearing. He asked, keeping his tone gentle. She paused, her chisel hovering above the ground. "It's for my little brother," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as if the very name was sacred. "He loved spending time in these hills, Tears brimmed in her eyes, but she blinked them away, showing a steadfast heart beneath her fragility. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his throat. He wanted to say something comforting, but words often fell flat in times of grief. Instead, he simply nodded, honoring her story, her pain. He asked softly, hoping to bring her warmth through remembrance. "Alex, he always wanted to explore," she replied, her smile returning bright but tinged with sadness. "He used to climb every tree, run down every path until he was too tired to keep going." Ethan nodded as he chipped away at the earth, forming the letters of her brother's name. With every carving, there was a sense of honoring, of keeping his spirit alive in the place he loved. "Sounds like he was a real adventurer," he said, trying to lighten the weight. "Oh, he was," she said, her voice growing stronger. "He taught me to be brave." There was a flicker of excitement in her eyes now, and Ethan found himself captivated, not just by her words, but by the way her spirit seemed to shimmer through her sorrow. Etched each letter carefully, searching for the perfect touches that would echo the love she had shared with him. She asked, breaking through the silence, her tone curious. "Not really," Ethan replied, chuckling lightly. She asked, tilting her head. He hesitated. It felt odd to lay his burdens bare. He shrugged lightly, trying to minimize it. "Long hours, pressure to succeed." She asked. Her gaze met his, sharp and unyielding yet soft. "Yeah, it does," he admitted. "It's quiet out here. You can breathe." "I get that," she said, an understanding smile creeping across her face. "Out here I can reach him." Every stroke of the chisel, every carved line had taken them deeper into a shared moment of vulnerability. Together they were friends now, bound by the threads of loss and the weight of the earth beneath them. Ethan felt the afternoon slipping through his fingers as the sky dimmed around them. He asked, making sure to keep his voice light yet sincere. It was as if she considered the question carefully, shaping her thoughts with the same care she had given to Alex's marker. "I'd like to," he nodded, impressed by her strength. She laughed softly. "You think I can? I know you can. I can feel it," he said confidently. The sun dipped lower, golden light wrapping around them like a tender hug. As they neared the final touches of the marker, a delicate carving of a mighty oak stretched overhead, roots sprawling out like arms, welcoming them to the earth. Death and life intertwined, she asked, stepping back to appreciate their work. "It's beautiful," Ethan murmured, appreciating the blend of grief and hope that now rested in the hillside. There was something sacred in it, promise fulfilled. "Thank you for helping me," she said quietly, her voice imbued with gratitude. It was an honor," he replied sincerely, feeling an unexpected swell of meaning in a day that had begun like any other. Just as they were clearing away the last remnants of dirt, a shadow loomed over them. Both looked up to see an older man, his face lined with age and worry. He called with concern. "There you are. I'm okay, Dad," she reassured him, her voice steady. The man's gaze shifted from Leela to Ethan, assessing, sizing him up like a protective guardian. "Just a friend," she added quickly. Ethan offered a small smile, hoping to convey goodwill, but inside he felt another knot forming. This moment of connection was soon about to shatter as reality pressed in. "Can you get going? It's late," her father urged, scratching the back of his head. She glanced back at the marker, a hint of longing in her eyes. The father's expression softened slightly, revealing the hint of understanding that lay beneath his worry. They shared a moment, father and daughter in a world of their own making, and for that fleeting instant, Ethan felt like an outsider in the most sacred of spaces. But then Leela turned to him, determination flickering in her eyes. "Thank you," she said again, her words holding an echo that made Ethan feel seen. "I'll come back up here." He nodded, feeling something shift in the air, like change was whispering between every breath. "Take care of yourself," he said, forcing a smile even as he fought the urge to reach out for her hand. "I will," she replied, more firmly now, and with that they parted, a story left unfinished. As he walked away, the hills full of memories and the marker standing tall, Ethan felt a strange sense of loss and hope intermingling. The world around him had shifted, loss had turned into connection, silence into strength. In the fading light, Ethan took a moment to look back, hoping to catch a glimpse, a final memory of Leela. Yet she was gone, leaving only the whispering leaves to carry on her story. The walk back seemed longer, each step echoing with a mixture of thoughts. And as he reached the trailhead, he felt a new sense of purpose bloom within him, a reminder that even in moments of darkness, there lies the chance to carve out light. He stumbled upon her carving a marker in the hillside. The sound of metal gently striking earth was the first thing that pulled him in. Curiosity flickered in Ethan's chest as he followed the noise, each step measured against the crunch of dry leaves beneath his boots. The sun was beginning to dip behind a curtain of trees, throwing shadows that danced ominously across the ground. When he reached her, a girl in a faded blue jacket was kneeling beside a gentle slope. Her hands were steady, tensed with concentration. With a small chisel glinting in the fading light, she was engaged in a task that felt both intimate and monumental. The carvings she was making shimmered with significance, each stroke a whisper in the wind, a thought projected onto the earth. He asked, stepping closer. His voice broke the stillness like a pebble dropped into a quiet pond. She looked up, startled. Her green eyes were wide and filled with emotion, as if she were holding something back. "It's a marker," she replied, glancing nervously at the hillside. A knot of curiosity tightened in Ethan's stomach. The words slipped out before he could think too much about them. He sensed urgency in her task, an unspoken weight hanging between them like the branches overhead. A moment passed, tension hanging in the air. Finally, she nodded, and a flicker of relief washed over her face. As he knelt beside her, Ethan took the chisel from her grip, feeling the warmth remaining from her touch. He asked, his voice softer now, careful not to intrude too much. The girl drew in a breath, filling the silence with a quiet resolve. "My little brother, Alex, he loved these hills." She looked at the ground, her focus shifting to the letters. She had carved a mix of symbols and shapes that began to take form. The words hit Ethan like a sudden gust of cold air. He felt the weight of her grief settle around them, encasing them in an unbreakable moment. He wanted to say something comforting, something profound, but the right words eluded him. Instead, he nodded, honoring the raw honesty of her pain. "I'm sorry," he said simply, and the sincerity wrapped around them like a gentle embrace. "Thank you," she replied, her voice catching slightly. "It helps to honor him, to remember all the good times we had." Ethan could feel the warmth of their shared moment, the connection building like the layers of the earth beneath them. She smiled, a fragile light breaking through her sorrow. Everything, climbing trees, splashing in streams, racing to the top of hills to see the sunset. Eased lightly, hoping to ease the heaviness for a moment, she laughed softly, the sound cutting through the air like a ray of sunshine breaking through clouds. "Exactly, I was such a scaredy cat, but Alex would never let me stop." "Sounds like he was a great brother," Ethan said, his heart warming to her story. He tapped the chisel against the rock underfoot, pouring his energy into the carving. "Yeah," she said softly, her expression shifting into something deeper. "He was my biggest supporter, but then he got sick." Ethan's heart twisted in empathy. He could see the cracks in her composure, the momentary waver that threatened to spill into tears. "He loved them," she said, her voice stronger now, fortified by the memory. "He'd dream of being a park ranger one day." As they worked together, carving his name into the hillside, they fell into a rhythm. The soft whispers of nature surrounded them, as if the trees and the wind were cocooning them in understanding. The sun dipped lower, casting golden hues across the land, illuminating the earth like a sacred space. Ethan could feel his own burdens beginning to lift. It was as if in sharing her story, Leela was offering him a piece of her strength. He asked, trying to lighten the moment while keeping the flow of honesty alive. "I'd like to climb," she said, her eyes sparking with an idea that let the light of hope shine through her grief. "Let's do it," he replied, his voice steady. Leela raised an eyebrow, surprised by his boldness. "Are you serious?" he replied, a grin stretching across his face. "The night isn't here yet and the hills are calling." She hesitated for just a moment, weighing her fear against the memory of her brother. Then with a spark of defiance, she nodded. With a shared sense of purpose, they finished carving the final touches, etching Alex's name into immortality. The air buzzed with unspoken excitement, and as they stood up, Leela took a long, deep breath. It felt like the first leap off a ledge, a taste of freedom mingled with fear. They moved toward a rise that stretched before them, a climb that looked both daunting and thrilling. As they began their ascent, the memories of laughter and adventure echoed in Leela's mind, memories that propelled her forward like a powerful wind. "I can't believe I'm actually doing this," she laughed, brushing her hair back as they navigated the rocks and boulders. "Looks like today is a day for firsts," Ethan replied. He felt the thrill of adrenaline course through him, not just from the climb, but from the rush of connection with Leela, the profound way she was reclaiming her strength. The closer they got, the more the landscape opened up before them, a breathtaking wide view of undulating hills and valleys bathed in the fading orange and pink of the setting sun. It felt like stepping into a painting. As they reached the top, the world around them seemed to hush, as if the mountains themselves were holding their breath in awe. Leela gasped, overcome. Wow, it really is, Ethan agreed, taking in the beauty of it all. And then he noticed something. Leela stood taller, her stance more confident, as if the weight she had carried had begun to dissolve. For a moment, they simply stood there, consumed by the view, and even though the silence was profound, it was beautiful, a connection that bridged not just their moment, but echoed through the universe. Alex would have loved this, she said, the bittersweet edge to her voice bringing Ethan back to reality. He nodded, understanding completely. He's here, he assured her, gesturing to the panorama before them. In every one of those trees, every swirl of the wind, he's part of this. Tears glassed over her eyes again, but this time there was a soft smile breaking through, the mixture of grief and joy. I think I can finally let him go, she whispered, as if saying it out loud solidified the truth. Ethan felt a rush of warmth in his chest, like a light piercing through the shadows. That's a big step, he said. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with the last strokes of purple and gold, Leela's laughter rang through the air, as vibrant as the colors around them. He could feel the joy bubbling up from within her like a geyser ready to burst forth. Let's come back, she said suddenly, her eyes alight with determination. And do this again. Absolutely. This can be a new tradition, Ethan said, a plan forming. You could even bring a whole group one day, she exclaimed, clapping her hands together. They began their descent, their hearts soaring with a renewed sense of life. As they navigated the rocky terrain, something shifted within Ethan. He could feel echoes of his own burdens lifting, the pressure of solitude fading like a distant memory. Before long, they reached the base of the hill, the last glow of twilight still clinging to the sky. Leela turned to him, laughter still dancing in her eyes. Thank you for today, Ethan. I'd say I do, he replied, feeling inspired by her courage. With a shared smile, they parted ways, but that moment lingered in the air, a gentle promise nestled between the trees and the stars. Walking back, Ethan glanced over his shoulder at the hills, now dusted with the quiet of night. He realized something profound. She had carved more than just a marker in the hillside. Together, they had carved a path into hope, a pathway illuminated by shared secrets, laughter, and the resilience that blooms even in the darkest of moments. And in the quiet of his heart, he made a vow to himself, to explore those hills again, not just for the beauty that lay within, but for the connection that awaited in every step forward. He found her carving a marker in the hillside just as the sun began to set. The sky was a canvas, painted with bold strokes of orange and purple, casting long shadows over the ground. Ethan, seeking solitude, had wandered off the beaten path, hoping to escape the chaotic swirl of thoughts in his head. But as he drew nearer, the rhythmic sound of metal tapping against stone beckoned him. She was kneeling, her back to him, so focused on her task that she didn't notice his arrival. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment he hesitated. Drawn by curiosity, he stepped closer, his heart ticking like a metronome. The closer he got, the more he could see what she was creating, letters etched in the earth, forming a name, a message, a memorial. He asked, his voice breaking the serene silence, echoing in the stillness of the hillside. She jumped, turning to meet his gaze, surprise quickly washing away to reveal a layer of vulnerability. Her hair fluttered in the wind, and her green eyes sparkled like emeralds, though her brow was furrowed with concentration. It's a marker, she said breathlessly. Ethan felt a pang of curiosity mixed with sympathy. Alex, she whispered, her gaze falling back to the carving. There was a weight to her words, a heaviness that seemed to fill the hillside. He loved being outside. Ethan's heart squeezed, the vulnerability in her eyes resonating deeply. He asked gently, sensing the importance of the moment. Her lips trembled, and for the briefest second he thought she might pull back into her grief, but instead she leaned forward, her hands gripping the chisel tighter. He passed away last summer. It was sudden. The words tumbled out, punctuated by a shaky breath, and Ethan knew he had stumbled upon something raw and profound. I'm so sorry, he said, the sincerity heavy in the air between them. She nodded, the corners of her mouth pulling into a slight smile, though her eyes shimmered with tears. I just wanted to do something special, you know. The carving showed letters spelling out his name, intertwined with swirling designs that echoed the rolling hills around them. Ethan's voice was steady, a lifeline extended in an emotional storm. She looked at him, surprise flickering across her face as if the invitation hadn't crossed her mind until that moment. Yeah, I'd like that, she replied, her voice warming. As Ethan knelt beside her, he felt a flicker of purpose ignite within him. The cool earth beneath them was more than just soil. It was a canvas of sorrow and love, a testament to memories etched into time. He took the chisel from her hands, feeling the warmth of her touch lingering on the cold metal. "Tell me more about Alex," he prompted, hoping to fill the silence with stories that would honor her brother. She paused, a smile breaking through the veil of sadness. He was adventurous, always wanted to explore, to push boundaries. Ethan asked, intrigued. He would climb trees, jump into rivers, anything to feel alive. Her laughter rang out, though it was tinged with a bittersweet note. In that moment, they were not just strangers. They shared the weight of loss, and Ethan felt connected to her in a way that was unexpected yet powerful. As they carved together, each stroke of the chisel seemed to pull them deeper into a shared history. Ethan's heart echoed with his own memories, moments of loss surfacing, memories of loved ones, spaces where grief and happiness collided. Leela asked, turning to him, her curiosity piqued. "Honestly, to escape," Ethan replied, his honesty flowing freely. "It's my way of coping with everything. Work can be overwhelming." He glanced at her, sensing that she understood. "Out here, everything feels different," she agreed. Their conversations flowed like the very wind that swept over the hillside, and soon enough they were talking not just of loss, but of dreams and hopes, laughter intermingled with tears. Leela asked as they shifted to carving the final letters, her green eyes reflecting encouragement. "I want to climb," Ethan said, emboldened by the moment. Leela's eyes widened with excitement, her lips curving into a playful smile. "Do you think we can? Life is steep," he replied, grinning. With a shared breath of courage, they finished the carving, their hands working in unison to create a testament to a brother's spirit. As the sun began to dip lower, casting warm golden hues across the land, Leela stepped back, her eyes wide in awe. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice a mixture of triumph and sadness. "It is," he agreed, feeling a swell of pride for what they had created together. She asked, her determination evident. Ethan nodded, encouraged by her spirit, the shift in her energy like a spark igniting the air around them. Together, they set off toward the rise, hearts pounding in rhythm with the thrill of adventure. The climb wasn't easy. The rocky terrain challenged them, each step requiring effort and determination. The air thickened with anticipation, and Ethan felt a familiar rush, a blend of fear and exhilaration. Leela's confidence buoyed them both, her laughter guiding him scaling new heights. He encouraged, determination dancing in her voice. Whenever fatigue threatened to set in, he looked into her eyes, seeing the fire there and feeling it ignite within himself. He remembered her brother's spirit, the adventurous soul that he had never met but who echoed through every word Leela had shared. Finally, they reached the top. The view was breathtaking, hills rolling like waves under the gentle caress of the wind. The last rays of sunlight stretched across the horizon, illuminating the world with an ethereal glow. Leela's face lit up, her laughter ringing out like a bell in the stillness. She exclaimed, arms stretching wide as though she could embrace the entire landscape. "It really is," Ethan replied, his heart swelling with a sense of connection, not just with Leela, but with something greater. They stood shoulder to shoulder, two souls united by loss, laughter harmonizing with the breeze. Then, as if the universe had conspired to make their moment even more profound, a flock of birds burst into flight, sweeping across the sky in graceful formation. It was as if Alex was joining them, soaring freely, reminding them that life continued, that beauty existed even amid sorrow. Leela asked softly, looking at him with wonder. "Yeah," Ethan replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Exactly," she said, her eyes shining. "He's part of this." In that moment, a shift happened inside Leela. Something monumental was taking place. Her heart, once heavy with grief, felt lighter, almost lifted by the very air around them. "Thank you for pushing me to climb today," she said, sincerity wrapping around each word. "I needed this, I feel. And thank you for letting me share this with you," Ethan said earnestly, his heart swelling with gratitude. As the sun finally dipped behind the horizon, shadows stretched across the landscape, lying like a comforting blanket over them. They turned to the marked hillside below, the name etched forever, breathing life into Alex's spirit. It felt sacred, like a pact sealed between the living and the lost. With the chill of dusk settling in, they began their descent, laughter and memories mingling freely as they retraced their steps. A sharing of journeys, hers filled with loss and pain, his marked by the pressures of life, yet both united in their newfound strength. "Let's come back," Leela said suddenly. "I'd love to," Ethan replied. "It feels empowering, doesn't it?" As they reached the base of the hill, the warmth of the day slipping away, they paused one last time, glancing back at the hillside where the marker stood. "Alex would have loved today," Leela said, a soft smile breaking through her reflection. "Yeah, I think he would have," Ethan replied, feeling a swell of connection that reached far beyond the both of them. They parted ways at the trailhead, the world continuing to turn around them, but something had shifted within both of them. In a fleeting moment of vulnerability, they knew they had experienced more than just a day on the hillside. As Ethan walked away, the weight he had carried for so long felt lighter, almost as if he, too, had carved his burdens into that sacred earth. The hills held stories, memories intertwined with love and loss, reminding them that life filled with twists and turns was meant to be embraced, cherished, and explored. In the echoes of laughter among the trees, Ethan realized he would return, not just for the solitude that once beckoned him, but for the connection, the friendships waiting among the climbing paths, and the adventures still waiting to be uncovered. He found her carving a marker in the hillside, the sharp sound of her chisel striking the rock echoing through the quiet woods. Ethan had taken this path many times before, seeking escape from his daily grind, but never had he stumbled upon something so unexpected. The moment caught him off guard, curiosity piquing as he watched her intently focus on the task at hand. She was a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, with tousled hair whipped by the breeze and a blue hoodie that stood out against the earthy tones of the ground. As he stepped closer, he could see the grooves she had etched into the rock, letters taking shape, forming a name both beautiful and filled with unspoken weight. He called, his voice cutting through the peaceful air like a knife. She looked up suddenly, her green eyes wide with surprise. For a second, he saw vulnerability flicker across her face, a moment of hesitation before she let her guard down. "It's a marker," she replied, returning her gaze to the hillside, a mixture of concentration and sadness washing over her features. Ethan felt the gravity of her words sink in, pulling at something deep within him. He asked carefully. "Alex," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The sorrow in her tone wrapped around them like a heavy blanket. He loved this place. Without thinking, Ethan took a step closer. The question hung in the air, charged with unspoken emotion, and he could feel the weight of her grief shift like the wind through the trees. Her eyes glistened as she blinked back tears. "He passed away last summer," she said, gently lifting the chisel again. "Car accident." The words came tumbling out, heavy with the truth of loss. "I'm really sorry," Ethan responded, his voice filled with genuine compassion. Leela nodded, forcing a small smile through the pain. "I wanted to do something special, something that would keep his spirit alive." She gestured to the growing inscription, tracing the letters with her fingers. Ethan felt an ache in his chest, a connection blossoming in this shared moment of vulnerability. The question slipped out before he even thought about it. He wasn't sure why he had asked. Perhaps it was the raw honesty in her eyes, the flicker of hope that shimmered beneath the hurt. A moment of surprise flickered across her face, quickly replaced by determination. He knelt beside her, feeling the earth cool beneath him, the texture of the rock gritty against his palms. She handed him another chisel, and their fingers brushed for just a moment, an electric connection that sent a jolt through him. Together, they focused on the letters, their movements syncing as if guided by an unseen hand. Ethan asked quietly. He didn't want to pry, but he felt drawn to understand this boy who had brought so much light to her life. Leela's expression softened. "He was adventurous, always dragging me along with him. He'd say, 'Life is a climb, Leela.'" She laughed lightly, and Ethan could see her spirit shining through the veil of sadness. "Sounds like he had a way of making things exciting," Ethan replied, smiling as he focused on the rock, carefully chiseling out the letters spelling Alex's name, intertwined with hearts and symbols that reflected Leela's memories. "Yeah," she said, a bittersweet smile creeping onto her lips. He loved to explore. He had this light in him that, as they worked together, he felt warmth growing between them, something that transcended the pain. There was a shared understanding that connected them, a bond forged in the footsteps of grief and hope. They were quiet for a moment, each lost in their thoughts, lost in the rhythm of carving. Ethan felt the fresh air fill his lungs, contrasting with the suffocating haze of his own life back home. He asked, breaking the silence, truly curious. "To remember him, to feel closer to him," she replied, a softness in her voice. "To me, this is a way to escape," Ethan confessed. "To breathe, just stepping away from everything is." Leela looked at him thoughtfully. "It's like carving something into this world makes it feel permanent, you know." They finished carving the last letters of Alex's name, their fingers brushing against the earth. Sunlight began to dip lower, casting an orange glow, making the rocks shimmer like they were alive. She suddenly asked, her eyes lighting up with excitement, "I want to see the sunset from up there." Ethan could feel the fire in her words, and he liked it. "Let's do it," he replied confidently, feeling a rush of adrenaline. As they prepared to climb, she stepped back, uncertainty flickering across her face. "Are you sure?" "Trust me," Ethan said, his voice steady. "You can do this." With a shared breath of courage, they began to ascend the rocky hillside. Each step was a challenge, but with every foot they gained, laughter broke free. Leela's spirit shone brightly, her joy infectious. "See," Ethan called out, motioning for her to follow. She teased, pushing herself forward. They continued climbing higher, the ground falling away behind them. The trees twisted and turned beneath the fading light, a distant horizon revealing itself in shades of brilliant gold and pink. Finally, they reached the top. Leela stood breathless, her eyes wide in awe as she took in the view. The world sprawled below them, alive and vibrant. She exclaimed, her voice echoing the thrill in her heart. "It's breathtaking," Ethan agreed, feeling the cool breeze wrap around them like a blanket. As the sun dipped lower, it painted the sky with vibrant colors, casting everything in a warm glow. Leela breathed in deeply, the landscape alive with the beauty of the moment. Alex would have loved this, she said, a wistful smile crossing her lips. I think he's here with us, Ethan replied, watching as the colors shifted and morphed above them. Tears glistened in her eyes, but there was warmth in her smile. This day has meant so much to me, she admitted. Ethan felt a swell of emotion, realizing how this unexpected encounter had transformed his own perspective. We all need a little push sometimes, he said gently. You've shown me what it means to remember. They stood side by side, lost in the beauty of the moment. Leela's laughter mingled with the rustling leaves, joy radiating from her as the world continued to unfold around them. As dusk settled, the temperature dropped, a chill sliding through the air. We should head back down, Ethan suggested, glancing at the darkening path ahead. Leela nodded, but her gaze lingered on the horizon. Of course, he said, standing beside her. They took in the breathtaking view one final time, letting it fill the spaces in their hearts. As they began their descent, the path felt familiar yet transformed. Each step echoed with laughter and shared stories, and Ethan found himself reflecting on what it meant to connect with another person in times of sorrow. I want to come back, Leela said suddenly. I want to bring my parents. Absolutely, Ethan replied, heart swelling with commitment. They continued down the hillside, the air fresh and alive. With each step, he felt a bond building between them, the kind of connection that forged strength through shared experiences. As they reached the bottom, the sky turned a deeper shade of indigo, stars beginning to pepper the heavens above them. An uneasy feeling crept into Ethan's thoughts as he realized that their time together was coming to an end. I wish I didn't have to go, Leela said softly, brushing a strand of hair back from her face. Same here, Ethan admitted, a sense of reluctance settling over him. You have such a bright spirit. Yeah, she said, the warmth of their shared experience wrapping around them. Thank you for letting me help, he replied, sincerity flooding his tone. They stood for a moment, letting the comfortable silence of their connection settle between them. In that fleeting time, something had shifted. Two souls, connected over the carving of a name, had turned into something deeper, something lasting. Let's keep in touch, Leela suggested suddenly, pulling a small notebook from her backpack and writing down her number. Ethan accepted the piece of paper, a smile breaking across his face. As they parted ways, the day's weight lifted from Ethan's heart, an unexpected lightness spreading through him. He walked away, glancing back one last time at the hillside, where memories had been carved into the earth. In that moment, he realized something profound. Life has a way of weaving stories together, of bringing people into our paths when we least expect it. He had set out for solitude and found connection instead, an experience that would follow him long after the sun dipped below the horizon. Even as darkness settled around him, the light within stayed aglow, a testament to the bonds formed amid loss and hope. Somewhere among the hills and the stars, Alex's spirit felt alive, reminding them all that even in grief, love endured, and every climb was worth the view at the top. He found her carving a marker into the hillside, her chisel biting into the earth with a rhythmic tap that echoed in the stillness of the woods. Ethan had taken this path countless times, seeking the solace of nature, but today felt different. As he crested a small rise, he caught sight of her, a young woman with tousled hair and a deep focus etched on her brow. At first, she didn't notice him. Her concentration was total, and he felt like an intruder in her quiet world. She was kneeling in the soft earth, sunlight filtering through the trees, casting a warm glow around her. The moment was raw and intimate, as if she were communing with the very land itself. Hey, he called out, his curiosity getting the better of him. She startled at the sound of his voice, looking up with wide, green eyes. It took her a moment to process him, surprise melting into a mix of trepidation and resolve. It's a marker, she said, finally returning her gaze to the hillside. Ethan's heart sank, the air thickening between them. Alex, she replied softly, her voice trembling slightly. The loss weighed heavy in her eyes, a burden that seemed too big for such a small moment. He loved this place. I'm really sorry to hear that, Ethan said, feeling the rawness of her grief wrap around them like a shroud. Her hands shook slightly as she rested them on the ground, the chisel still in one of them. He died in an accident last summer, it was just. Her voice cracked, and in that moment, Ethan felt like he was standing on ground made of glass, a delicate surface that could shatter with the wrong word. I can't imagine how tough that must be, he said, his voice gentle. Thank you, she said, her sadness mingling with a flicker of gratitude. She nodded toward the letters she had painstakingly carved into the hillside, the shapes representing more than just a name. They were echoes of memories, conversations, laughter. I wanted to do something to remember him. Ethan felt a swell of compassion and an unbidden urge to help. He asked, not fully aware of what he was committing to. Her expression shifted, a mix of surprise and relief. He knelt beside her, feeling the cool earth beneath his palms. She handed him a second chisel, its metal warm from her touch. As he began to carve alongside her, he sensed the gravity of their task and a strange connection formed. Ethan asked, trying to steer the conversation into happier territory. Alex was everything, she said, a smile breaking through the cloud of sorrow. He was adventurous, always dragging me out to explore. She laughed lightly, but her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. He inquired, curious to unravel the threads of her story. Oh, all sorts. He'd take me hiking, climbing trees, jumping into rivers. He had this light in his eyes that made everything seem alive, she reminisced, her voice warming. For a moment, it felt like the weight of loss lifted slightly, the memories buoying them both, lifting their spirits. As they carved together, Ethan felt more than just the physical act of working. There was something healing in it, almost therapeutic. Each groove they created felt significant, every stroke a reminder that stories lingered in the earth. He asked, glancing at the expanse of trees surrounding them. "It's our place," she said, her voice steady now. "Alex loved to come here to get away from everything." "Sounds like a good escape," Ethan said, looking out at the landscape. "Sometimes I come here to think. It's like the world pauses for a moment," she agreed. They worked in silence for a few moments, the sound of carving mingling with the soft rustle of leaves. Leela's determination resonated in the way she furrowed her brow as she concentrated, and Ethan found her strength inspiring. He asked after a while, curious about her plans. She hesitated, biting her lip as she glanced up at the hillside. "I want to climb to that lookout point." Ethan felt a thrill run through him. "Let's do it," he said confidently. A flicker of fear crossed her face. "Are you sure? It's not about the steepness," he replied, trying to encourage her. "It's about the view when you get to the top." Leela smiled, a mixture of gratitude and challenge igniting in her eyes. With new purpose, they finished the marker, carving the last delicate touches into the hillside and stepping back to admire their work. The sun hung low in the sky, dipping toward the horizon, its warm light casting golden colors across the landscape. "It's perfect," she breathed, her eyes shining. "Just like he would have wanted," Ethan replied. They moved toward the ascent, a steep path winding through rocks and trees. The climb posed its challenges. Each step required effort, each push forward a reminder of their strength. The air grew cooler as they climbed, but Leela's determination lit the way forward. Ethan called out, his voice carrying encouragement on the breeze. She shot back, a playful glint in her eyes. As they reached a particularly steep section, Leela paused for breath, uncertainty flickering across her face again. "Trust me," he reassured her, his tone steady. "We're in this together." With renewed resolve, Leela pushed onward, and Ethan followed closely behind, feeling inspired by her determination. They navigated the rocky terrain, laughter replacing the heaviness that had initially surrounded them. Finally, they reached the lookout point. As they stepped onto the rocky ledge, the world spread out before them, a sweeping panorama painted in hues of gold and crimson as the sun began its descent. Leela gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just like I promised," Ethan replied, standing beside her, both of them soaking in the view. The weight of their journey settled over them, and it felt sacred somehow to be here together to share the moment. As the last bits of sunlight danced across the horizon, Leela turned toward Ethan, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you for today," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I've needed this." "I'm glad I could help," he said, feeling a rush of warmth. In that moment they stood together, the sunset casting a gentle glow around them, and it struck Ethan how easily their lives had intertwined. Two strangers bound together in grief and hope. "I can't help but feel Alex is here with us," she whispered, wiping away a rogue tear. "He is," Ethan replied, looking out over the landscape. "In every beautiful moment, every memory you share." They spent a few more moments in silence, letting the beauty sink in. As night began to settle, starry skies lighting up above them, a sense of peace enveloped Leela. "We should head back soon," she said finally, glancing at the path ahead. "Let's take a moment first," Ethan suggested, wanting to extend the magic of their shared experience just a little longer. With a nod, they stepped back, allowing the view to wrap around them. The horizon melted into darkness, but the stars began to shine bright, twinkling like memories in the night sky. "Let's come back," Leela said suddenly, her voice bubbling with newfound energy. "Absolutely," Ethan agreed, feeling the warmth of her resolve. They made their descent slowly, laughter echoing through the trees as they retraced their steps. The path felt different now, each stone and leaf imbued with meaning after their experience. As they neared the base, Ethan felt a familiar tug in his heart. This connection was unique, forged in a day full of raw emotions and deep revelations. "I can't believe we did that," Leela said, a smile stretching across her face. "That's what it's all about," Ethan replied, his own heart lightening. As they reached the trailhead, laughter filled the air around them, a joyful melody that seemed to linger in the twilight. "I'm so glad I ran into you today," Leela said, looking him straight in the eye. "So am I," Ethan replied, sincerity coloring his words. With a shared promise, they exchanged phone numbers, the connection blooming into friendship. "We should keep in touch," Leela suggested, her eyes bright with possibility. "Definitely," he said, tucking her number into his wallet. As they parted ways, Ethan felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. Their paths had crossed for a reason. He had set out alone, seeking comfort in nature, and in turn had found a connection that would linger, a light in the midst of darkness. Walking away, glancing back one last time at the hillside they had transformed together, Ethan realized how powerful it was to carve not just names into the ground, but also to create paths of understanding and friendship. As he re-entered the world filled with noise and chaos, an unexpected calm filled him. Stories and bonds were being woven all around, and he could feel the gentle push of adventure calling him back. He knew he'd return to the hills, to the girl, and to the memories waiting to be created. In that convergence of life and love, he understood one undeniable truth. Even in grief, life continued to pulse with beauty, and every climb was worth the view. He found her carving a marker in the hillside, the rhythmic tap of her chisel breaking the silence of the woods. Ethan had wandered these trails many times, seeking solace from the chaos of everyday life, but today he felt an unfamiliar tug of curiosity pulling him closer to her. She was engrossed in her work, knees bent, with dirt smudged on her hands and streaks across her cheeks. The late afternoon sun draped them both in warm light, turning the world golden. Each strike of the chisel sent a small spray of dust into the air. Each letter she carved seemed to breathe life into the hillside. As he stepped closer, Ethan strained to see what she was creating. The letters were deliberate, etched in a way that suggested more than just words. This was a tribute, a memory. He called out, his voice crackling through the tranquil afternoon. She looked up, startled. Her eyes were wide and green, shimmering with surprise. After a brief pause, she answered, "It's a marker." Ethan's heart sank at the weight of her words. He asked gently. "Alex," she replied, her voice quivering slightly. "He used to come here all the time. We would just..." Her gaze drifted back to the hillside, a flood of emotions washing over her as memories danced just out of reach. "I'm really sorry," Ethan said, feeling the gravity of her loss in every word. She paused, her brow creasing as she held back tears. He died last summer, a car accident." The words felt heavy in the air, like stones cast into a deep lake. "I can't imagine how hard that is," Ethan replied, his heart aching for her. Leela nodded, her fingers brushing the letters she had carved. "I wanted to do something that would keep his spirit alive." Without thinking, Ethan found himself reaching for a chisel lying beside her. The offer felt spontaneous, yet sincere. Her surprise turned into gratitude, sure. As he knelt beside her, he felt a sense of connection, an urgency to help. Together they began working, their chisels tapping against the stone, the sound mingling with the gentle rustling of leaves. Ethan asked, his curiosity piquing as they delved deeper into this shared moment. Leela's expression softened, and a hint of a smile crossed her lips. "He was adventurous," she said, her voice warming. "Always pushing me to explore and climb higher. He would say, 'Life is a climb, Leela.'" Ethan laughed softly, feeling the warmth of her memories. "He was," she said, a glimmer of pride in her eyes. "He taught me about life. He was never afraid to try new things." As they continued carving, they began to share more than just the task at hand. Ethan talked about his own life struggles, the pressures of work and the weight of expectations that often felt suffocating. "I come out here to escape," he admitted, the vulnerability in his voice surprising him. "To breathe." Leela met his gaze, understanding painted across her features. "Here you can just be." Time slipped away as they carved Alex's name into the hillside, the letters intertwining with symbols that held personal meaning for Leela. With each tap of the chisel, they spoke less of sorrow and more of dreams and adventures. Laughter started to punctuate the air, pushing out some of the heaviness. Ethan asked, hoping to direct the conversation toward healing. "I have to," she replied, her resolve strengthened. "I think you'll find him in many places," Ethan said softly, glancing out at the sweeping landscape filled with valleys and trees. Drawing a deep breath, Leela looked up at him as if something clicked into place. Asked suddenly, her eyes lighting up with excitement. He felt a rush of adrenaline. "Absolutely." As they finished the carving, the sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting the horizon with hues of orange and pink. The light felt intoxicating, illuminating their work as if nature herself was blessing their tribute. Ethan said, standing up and brushing the dirt from his hands. Leela's enthusiasm buoyed them both as they began the ascent. The climb was steep, the path rocky and uneven underfoot. With each step upward, Ethan could feel Leela's determination, her spirit pushing them forward. The trees around them whispered secrets and the air grew crisper, electric with anticipation. She teased, turning to glance back at him with a playful smile. He replied, a smile stretching across his face as the thrill of adventure coursed through him. As they neared the top, the terrain became more challenging. Leela asked suddenly, hesitation creeping into her voice. "Trust yourself," Ethan urged, his tone encouraging. "We're in this together." A flicker of doubt crossed her brow, but then she nodded, taking a deep breath as she moved forward. The summit loomed closer, and together they tackled the final stretch, hearts pounding in their chests. Finally, they crested the hill and stepped onto the lookout ledge, breathless from effort. View took their breath away, a sprawling panorama of hills blanketed in rich greens and browns, the sunset casting a golden light over everything. It felt like standing on the edge of the world. "Wow," Leela breathed, her eyes sparkling. "It really is," Ethan replied, taking a moment to soak in the beauty before him. As the last rays of the sun melted into the horizon, Leela turned toward him, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you for being here with me today," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm honored to share this with you," he replied sincerely, feeling a warmth unfurl in his chest. Leela nodded, her expression shifting to one of resolve. I want to come back here. Ethan felt a swell of hope. We can do that. They spent a few more moments at the top, gathering strength from the continued beauty of the landscape before them. Each laugh, each shared secret built a bridge between their stories, a bond forged in the depths of loss and the promise of new beginnings. As dusk settled around them, a chill danced in the air. It was time to return, but they both lingered, reluctant to leave the connection they had forged. Let's head back, Ethan suggested gently, breaking the spell. Agreed, Leela said. Their descent felt lighter, laughter flowing freely between them like a song. Each step echoed with the richness of their shared experience. As they made their way back, Evan felt more grounded, more alive. Once at the trailhead, they paused, the world around them quieting just enough for their hearts to be heard. I really needed today, Leela confessed, the sincerity in her eyes palpable. I needed this too, Ethan admitted, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. With one last glance at the hillside, Leela pulled out a small notebook from her bag. Let's keep in touch. Ethan smiled, feeling a rush of warmth as he took her number. As they parted ways, Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him. Life had always been a series of climbs, and today he had forged a path into uncharted territory, a connection built on trust, grief, and hope. He walked away, glancing back at the hillside where they had carved not just a name, but layers of meaning. With each step he could feel the lingering connection to Leila, a reminder that every journey, no matter how steep, was filled with beauty waiting to unfold. In the quiet of the woods, Ethan realized how important it was to embrace vulnerability, to carve out space for healing. He would return, not just for the solitude he sought, but for the bond that had begun to grow, rooted in the earth, strong and unyielding. As he made his way back home, the sky turned to indigo, stars twinkling like silent witnesses to the stories shared. In that moment, Ethan knew he would carry Leela's journey with him, a light guiding him forward through the darkness, a reminder that even in the toughest climbs, the view at the top was always worth the effort. He found her carving a marker in the hillside, her chisel striking the rock with a sharp, practiced rhythm that pierced through the stillness of the forest. Ethan had hiked these trails many times, seeking solace from the chaos of life, but today the air felt heavier than usual. It pulled him toward the unexpected scene unfolding just a few feet away. She was a young woman, perhaps in her mid-20s, bent over with an intensity that seemed to envelop her. Her hands were caked with dirt, tear stains streaked across her cheeks, but she was focused, fighting against something unseen. It wasn't just a name she was carving, it felt like a connection to something deeper. "Hey," he called out, the curiosity bubbling up from his chest. Startled, she looked up, her green eyes wide and startled as if she had just been pulled from a trance. For a heartbeat, they stood there, uncertainty wrapping around them like a fog. "It's a marker," she replied, her voice a whispering breeze in the thick of the woods. Ethan's heart sank at the weight of her words, feeling the sadness ripple through the air. Asked gently, sensing there was more to this story. The name flowed from her lips, heavy with memories. He loved this place. "I'm really sorry to hear that," he said, the sympathy pouring out. She took a breath, gathering strength as the chisel trembled in her hand. There was a pause, the weight of her sorrow filling the space. Car accident, it was just so. A sharp pain pierced Ethan's heart, the rawness of her grief hitting home. "I can't even imagine how difficult that must be," he said softly. Leela nodded, her fingers brushing the letters she had carved so far, tracing each one like a lifeline. "He was adventurous," she said, a small smile breaking through her tears, "always urging me to climb higher, to explore more." Ethan could feel a warmth spreading through him. The appreciation in his voice was genuine, and he couldn't help but admire her spirit. "He did," she replied, her voice gaining strength, "and I want to remember him in a way that feels real." Her voice trailed off as she gestured to the hillside, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Without thinking, something deep inside Ethan urged him forward. The offer drew a surprised glance from her, but the weight behind her sorrow invited him in. "I could use an extra hand," she said, a flicker of hope shining through her eyes. He knelt beside her, feeling the earth cool beneath his fingertips, and took the chisel she handed him. Together they began again, carving letters into the soft dirt, the sound of their work harmonizing with the rustling leaves overhead. Each tap resonated deeper than just marking words. It felt as if they were stitching together a piece of her heart and soul. Ethan asked, wanting to know more about the brother who brought them to this moment. She looked up, her face illuminated by the sun filtering through the trees. "He was my adventure buddy," she said, a fond smile breaking through her sadness. "We would climb trees, discover secret paths, and jump into rivers without a second thought." "Sounds like he had a great outlook on life," Ethan replied, admiring her spirit. "Sometimes," she admitted, her eyes searching the ground as memories washed over her. "But I know he'd want me to keep exploring, to keep living. This isn't just about loss." Ethan felt a wave of understanding crash over him. Grief and joy coexist, don't they? With every letter they carved, life, love, and loss mingled in the air, creating a bond between them, two souls navigating the complexities of grief together. They continued to carve, the sun casting long shadows on the ground as the light began to soften. He asked, hoping to steer the conversation toward healing. "I have to," Leela said, a hint of determination coloring her tone. This is where I can feel him the most. Good, Ethan replied, feeling a swell of pride for her. Just then an idea sparked in her eyes. What if we climbed to that lookout point? He could feel the thrill echo in his chest, excitement bubbling over. Absolutely. They finished carving the last letters, stepping back to admire their work, a tribute that felt both small and monumental at the same time. The sun dipped lower in the sky, bathing everything in a warm orange hue. Ethan asked, brushing the dirt from his hands. Leela's determination buoyed them both as they started their ascent. The path was steep, rocks jutting out like obstacles, testing their resolve. Each step felt laborious, but as they climbed higher, the exhilaration grew. The trees whispered secrets to each other, the soft crackle of leaves beneath their feet fueling their spirit. She teased, looking back at him with a playful grin. Ethan shot back, chasing after her. The thrill of the climb infused them both with energy. As they approached a particularly rocky section, Leela paused, doubt flashing in her eyes. Trust yourself, Ethan assured her, his tone firm. We're in this together, remember what Alex would say. The spark of determination flickered back in her eyes and she nodded. Moving forward, they tackled the final stretch, hearts pounding and adrenaline surging. Finally, they reached the top, stepping onto the lookout ledge. The view opened up before them, a breathtaking tapestry of hills rolling beneath the vibrant sky. The sun painted everything in shades of gold and crimson as it dipped lower, casting shimmering reflections on the landscape. Wow, Leela breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. It's incredible, Ethan agreed, standing beside her. It took a moment to simply soak it in, the beauty wrapping around them like a warm embrace. I wish Alex could see this, she said softly, a tear slipping down her cheek. He's here, Ethan replied gently, gesturing toward the horizon. Leela wiped her tears, the connection between them growing stronger. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. I'm glad to be here, he said sincerely. As dusk settled around them, the world turned to shades of indigo, stars shimmering to life in the vast sky. They stood side by side, feeling the quiet magic of the moment linger. A strong bond had formed, a bridge built from shared stories and vulnerability. Let's come back, she proposed, turning to him. I want to carve more names, remember more people. Ethan's heart warmed at her words. I'd love that. As they made their way back, laughter danced in the air between them, each step echoing with the richness of their experience. The descent felt lighter somehow, the heaviness of grief lessened by their journey of connection. When they finally reached the base of the hill, Leela turned to him, gratitude illuminating her face. I'm so grateful for you, Ethan, she said softly. I needed this too, he admitted, feeling a rush of emotion. As they stood there, one last hug shared, a silent promise hung in the air, the promise to return, to carve memories, to honor the past, and embrace the future. They exchanged numbers, their fingers brushing briefly, electric. As they parted ways, Ethan felt peaceful, as if he had climbed not only the physical hill but also one of his own struggles. The sunlight began to wane, leaving behind a palette of twilight hues that mirrored the emotions swirling within him. Walking back through the woods, guided by the first stars overhead, he realized how vital it is to embrace vulnerability, to carve out spaces for healing. This day was about more than just a marker. It was about forging connections that could last, bonds that could guide through the darkness. The air felt lighter as he made his way home, the quiet whispers of the forest echoing around him. He knew he would return, not just for the solace of nature, but to honor the friendship that had sparked between them. And in the heart of the hills where memories lingered, Ethan understood. Every climb held value, and through loss, new connections blossomed. Today they had carved a tribute not only to a brother lost, but to the promise of life ahead. This was just the beginning, and together they would keep climbing toward the light. He found her carving a marker into the hillside, the rhythmic sound of the chisel striking rock slicing through the silence of the forest. Ethan had come to these trails many times, searching for peace, but today felt different. Today the air crackled with an energy he hadn't expected. He watched her for a moment, this young woman completely absorbed in her work, silhouetted against the backdrop of towering pines and blooming wildflowers. What was she marking? His curiosity pulled him closer. The sunlight streamed down, illuminating the small space around her, turning the dirt to gold. As he stepped into her line of sight, she looked up, startled. Her green eyes were wide but quickly softened as surprise melted into a cautious smile. Hey, he said, trying to sound casual, though his heart raced with uncertainty. It's a marker, she replied, her voice steady yet vulnerable, as if she were revealing a secret. She turned back to her task, her hands brushing against the earth around an inscription that was slowly taking shape. Ethan felt the weight of her words hang in the air. He asked, silently bracing himself for the answer. Alex, she said, her voice catching slightly. He loved this place more than anywhere else. A ripple of empathy coursed through him, knowing that this place they both cherished had now become a place of sorrow for her. I'm really sorry, he said, meaning it deeply. Her hands paused, fingers trembling over the carved letters. He died last summer. The confession came out in a whisper, wrapped in pain and loss. The emotion in her eyes was both haunting and beautiful. Ethan nodded, his heart aching for her. "I come here to feel close to him," she explained, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "This marker is how I keep his memory alive." Without even thinking about it, he felt compelled to offer his support. The invitation slipped out, surprising even him. She glanced up, surprise flickering into gratitude. Really? That would be great. As he knelt beside her, feeling the cool earth beneath him, their shared grief brought an unexpected connection. He took the chisel she handed him, its weight grounding him in the moment. They began to carve together, the sound of metal against stone filling the silence, creating a rhythm that was both soothing and intense. Ethan asked, wanting to understand more about the person who had impacted her life so deeply. She smiled faintly, reminiscing. "He was adventurous, always pushing me to explore, to climb higher." The warmth in her voice was evident, although it was now tinged with sadness. "I completely get that," Ethan said, trying to ease the heaviness that hung between them. Her eyes sparkled as she shared more stories about Alex, their childhood escapades, the trees they climbed, the streams they jumped into, and the dreams he held close. With every word she spoke, Ethan felt her spirit shining through the veil of grief. But as they carved deeper, the weight of her loss settled back around them. He asked, wanting to steer the conversation toward healing. "Absolutely," she replied, her voice gaining strength. "I think of this place as a part of him." Ethan nodded, feeling a pang of hope that she would find solace among the hills. He began carving the last letters of Alex's name, the shapes taking life under his careful hands. There was something sacred about their work, a way of making her grief visible and tangible. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, Leela's expression shifted suddenly. "I want to climb to that lookout point," she said, pointing toward a distant rise in the hills. Ethan felt a thrill run through him at the suggestion. He said with more excitement than he intended. A moment of hesitation crossed Leela's face. "What if it's too steep? Trust yourself," he said, remembering his own struggles. There was power in sharing uncomfortable moments, and through his encouragement, he hoped to show her that strength often came in companionship. With newfound determination, Leela nodded, her eyes sparkling once more. They finished the marker with a flourish, stepping back to admire the work they had done together. As they did, the golden light of the sunset illuminated the letters, casting shadows and pulling their attention away from the pain and into the beauty of shared purpose. Ethan asked, brushing off dirt from his hands. Leela's enthusiasm was infectious, and they both set off toward the ascent. The climb proved to be rugged, the trail winding steeply upward through dense foliage and rocky outcrops. Laughter mingled with breathy encouragement as they navigated the terrain, each step a small victory. Leela teased, glancing back over her shoulder with an impish grin. Ethan shot back, adrenaline surging through him. He didn't just want to help Leela, he wanted to rediscover his own sense of adventure. As they climbed higher, the trees gradually began to thin and the air grew noticeably cooler. Yet Leela's determination lit a fire in both of them. Just when Ethan thought they might pause for a breather, Leela suddenly stopped. She asked, doubt creeping back into her voice. Ethan met her gaze, searching for the right words. "You've already come this far, let the climb be your tribute to him." "Yeah," she said, taking a deep breath, her resolve returning. They pushed on, each footfall echoing with purpose, determination boosting their spirits. Finally, as they approached the summit, a wave of exhilaration washed over them. With one final effort, they crested the top. The view was breathtaking. The sun hung low on the horizon, spilling colors across the sky in a fiery display of pinks, oranges, and purples. As they stood there, breathless and awestruck, Leela took it all in, her eyes shimmering like the twilight sky. "It's beautiful," she whispered, realizing that love and loss could coexist in this moment. "It really is," Ethan echoed, heart swelling as he watched her soak in the landscape. He felt a sense of camaraderie, a connection binding them together on this journey. "Alex would have loved this," Leela said, tears forming again in her eyes, but this time they felt lighter, almost celebratory. "He's here with us," Ethan said, his voice drifting through the wind, "in this beauty." They turned their gaze back to the horizon, a serene silence enveloping them, allowing the weight of loss to settle gently in their hearts. But then, just as the moment began to take on an ethereal quality, Ethan's instinct kicked in, an unease bristled down his spine. "We should head back down soon," he suggested, looking at the darkening sky. I want to stay a little longer," Leela replied, a fierce sparkle igniting in her eyes as she took in the beauty surrounding them. "I need this." "Sure, but let's be cautious," Ethan warned, keeping an eye on the encroaching darkness that threatened their retreat. "Just a few more minutes," she insisted, a hint of desperation threading her words. The urgency in her voice made him hesitate. He understood this place was sacred to her, a refuge from grief. "Okay," he relented, taking a step closer to her. As time slipped away, the scent of pine mingled with the cool evening air, wrapping around them like a comforting embrace. But unbeknownst to them, shadows began to creep across the ground, silently devouring the last light of day. Suddenly, Leela took a step forward, her gaze fixed on something below. "Wait," she exclaimed, her fingers pointing to a mysterious shape lying in the distance, partially hidden beneath the brush. Ethan squinted, trying to see through the dimming light. "I don't know," she replied, a mixture of fear and curiosity flooding her voice. "It looks like." With trepidation, they both moved closer, the excitement curdling into apprehension. As they reached the edge of the forest, the outlines of the object became clearer. It was a weathered backpack, lying half buried in the dirt, surrounded by fallen leaves. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "That looks abandoned," he remarked, glancing at Leela to gauge her expression. She whispered, fear creeping into her voice. The thought sent a shiver through both of them, a reminder that the wilderness could hold secrets they weren't prepared to uncover. "Let's check it out," Ethan suggested, though his heart raced at the prospect. There was something about this moment, an intangible feeling of being on the brink of something significant. They approached the backpack, the forest closing in around them. With each step, the tension thickened, as if the very air was charged with anticipation. As they knelt down to examine it more closely, a sudden crack of a branch echoed in the stillness, sending a shockwave of fear through Ethan. He asked, voice low. Leela nodded, her expression turning to one of fear. Just then, a low rustle came from the bushes behind them, and Ethan's heart raced. They turned to look, breath held tight in their chests, the beauty of the sunset forgotten as an unseen presence loomed in the shadows. The backpack sat there, forgotten for the moment, but something even more urgent now demanded their attention. Both of them stood there, caught between the lure of curiosity and the instinct to run, trapped in a moment that could change everything. The darkening dusk held its breath, and as the evening deepened around them, Ethan could already sense that whatever lay ahead was anything but ordinary. The world had shifted, and beneath the weight of anticipation, a revelation was waiting to unfold.